Hi, it's Matt here for newshooter.com at NAB 2015. I'm with Stuart from Blackmagic Design. Now this is Blackmagic's new micro cameras.
Yeah, these are the micros, yeah.
And there it is. There's actually two different versions.
That's right. I mean, it's a camera, but it's also the same size as a tennis ball. So, you know, if you don't want to use it as a camera, we can get our bats and go and have a game of tennis with it. I think that the first thing which is striking about this camera is just the sheer size of it. We're talking about something that is basically 10 ounces in weight with a micro 4/3 lens mount, which means that all those professional lenses, those really neat micro 4/3 lenses, all fit to this body. Anybody who's familiar with our Pocket Cinema camera will know that we've got a Super 16 sensor with basically 13 stops of dynamic range in that camera. What we've done is we've ported that across into this little boy, and we've put an SD card slot on the side, which means that you can record basically 1080p either in ProRes or in RAW directly to that SD card.
And what sort of frame rates?
So this will do up to 60 frames per second. That's going to be basically going to be rolling shutter. You've also got on there as well things like HDMI output on there too, if you want to actually play video out of the camera. And on the side here, this is something which is quite cool and quite unique. We were looking at a way in which you're controlling the camera without necessarily having to have that hands-on. So we put this 15-pin expansion port on the side which connects via S.Bus or PWM, and that's very familiar to a lot of these guys who are doing stuff with drones. Anybody who is putting cameras up in the air basically wants to have functionality of that camera without having to bring the drone down and reset it. So with PWM you get around about 4 channels, which means you can connect, you can actually operate 4 different functions, but with S.Bus I think it's around about 18. So all the functionality of that camera is all controllable from basically a distance.
Okay, and how does it power up? What sort of battery does it use? Is it internal, removable?
Yeah, so the great thing again is that we've put an external battery on there as well, which is Canon E6. So anybody who's working with typical Canon cameras will know that is quite familiar. I think they're around about $50, something around about that amount, and that'll power it for between an hour and an hour and a half.
So was this designed by Blackmagic to maybe replace sort of existing, what you'd use for an action cam, or is it more designed for drones and gimbals? What's the design reasoning behind it?
I think all of those. I think that when you start to look at the Pocket Cinema camera, which we obviously have had for a couple of years now, people were using those in lots of different environments. They were strapping them to people's arms, they were strapping them on people's helmets, they were putting them in cars, they were flying them in drones. And I think that one of the challenges that you had was you had to look at that screen on the back to determine whether or not everything was ready to go. And then when you hit record, you had no real visual representation there other than the back screen as to whether or not it was being recorded. And when you then mounted these, say, in a tight spot within, say, a car, or you put them on a drone or an underwater housing, we wanted a way in which you could visually see that. So we've done things like put a tally light on the top, and we've made it lighter in weight, which means that all of those areas which were always problematic can now be overcome by this little fella.
And it's the versatile thing of being able to actually take the lens off and change it. You're not stuck with, like a super wide angle lens that used to be with a lot of these style cameras. So the versatility of being able to use it in a lot of other areas as well is really good.
And also the codecs. I mean, you're looking at very professional codecs in ProRes, and it's something we're all familiar with. And
is it all 3 flavors of ProRes?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so all the same ProRes flavors that you see in the Pocket Cinema camera are all available in this. Like you say, the lens mounts. I mean, there's some fantastically cheap lenses out there which are very stylistic and have a particular look, but then you can go up to much more advanced lenses. And micro 4/3 also has a great ability to adapt. So if you want to adapt into other lens types, you can also do that too.
Okay, now there's another version of this camera behind that we haven't talked about yet. They look almost identical, but what's the difference between this one and this one?
So the one over my shoulder is actually the studio version. So this doesn't have a built-in record function. This is actually meant as a new way of capturing live production. You'll see that as I turn this around this side, where the SD slot is on the cinema camera, the micro cinema camera, we've actually got SDI connectivity there. What that means is that if you're working, say, in live production and you're working in, again, a tight environment, nightclub, conference, whether or not you're working within, a music event, and you want to dock cameras around all over the place, you can do this very discreetly. You can control all the functionality through the A10, so things like the color correction, the iris settings, the focus settings, all that stuff can be done from our A10 production switches. And then also as well on the other side, where we have got the expansion port, which we talked about on the other one, this also has not only PWM and also S.Bus, it also has built in there the ability to do PTZ, and it also has the ability to power out for B4 lens mount. So if you want to put a professional B4 lens mount on there, you can actually draw the power from the camera.
And both these cameras, have they? What's the sort of ISO level you can get up to on them?
So on the Ultra HD version, you're talking sort of 200 native, and then that's the same as obviously our studio camera. So this is basically a video camera. With this one, you're talking native 800, I believe, which is the same as the Pocket.
Okay, now when are these both going to be available, and what's the prices on these two cameras?
We're going to ship these again around the middle of the year. I mean, as as always, you have to look at the volume in which potentially these may start to be ordered. Our aim is we want to get all of our cameras out around the middle of the year, around about July time. In terms of price, you're talking just under $1,000 for the HD one, which is the same price or similar price to the Pocket Cinema camera. I think you're talking $1,295 for the Ultra HD studio camera.
Okay, thanks very much.
No problem.